How's it going? Jonathan Johnson from the Johnson firm right here in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm joined today by Cooper Fournet. He's an injury attorney in our personal injury department right here at the Johnson firm. We've been shooting some videos to kind of give you some answers to frequently asked questions that Cooper gets whenever he's doing consults, meeting with potential clients, or questions that he gets while he's handling cases for clients. And one of the ones that we get asked a lot is about medical bills. How do medical bills get paid? How am I going to get treatment? What happens if I don't have medical insurance? Do I owe all this money back at the end? There's just clients a lot of times, especially when they're facing an injury and they have that anxiety that just comes with that uncertain future. Also have these questions and they don't understand how that's going to be handled. So if we can provide some clarity there, I think we're doing a service to people. So why don't you take it away and just kind of tell us, how medical bills and payments for treatment get handled in an injury situation.
Sure. So I'll first say that it's complicated and it's confusing sometimes.
Everybody loves that answer. It's just a whole lot.
A lot of times people really don't understand how complicated the United States healthcare system is until they've been in an accident and they start getting bills that they're like, hey, this is someone else's responsibility, So generally speaking, when someone comes into the office with an injury case and they have had an ambulance ride or been to the emergency room, been to an urgent care, we're going to gather those bills up because we want to see, are these bills outstanding or did health insurance pay on this? Mm-hmm. And then looking from that, we can kind of gather, okay, who are we working with here? Right. Because there's so many different types of health insurance policies out there. There's private health insurance, there's Medicaid, Medicare, there's VA health insurance. Mm-hmm. And so it can get really complex because the rights to recover from the case depends on who those entities are. Right. So I guess the easiest place to start would be, let's just assume someone has no health insurance. Okay. So when you do not have health insurance and you have an ambulance ride or emergency room visit, you're responsible for that bill, even though someone else caused you to incur that. Right. And sometimes the providers will file a legal lien onto the health insurance, onto the auto insurance case, so that they won't try to collect it from you. But a lot of times the providers, they have kind of automated systems in place where they will absolutely start trying to collect that ambulance bill, that emergency room bill from you, even though you haven't settled your case. Yeah. And by law, you are responsible for that. Right. Now, one of the things that, is a benefit to having counsel or us involved in your case is we can make sure to back those collection agencies off, back the hospitals off and say, hey, there's a claim here. We're going to promise to pay you when the case settles. And sometimes we just say, you know what, let's just pay that bill and square it away. And then we'll, get recovery on the back end of the thing. Right. So that's with no health insurance. Okay. If you come to my office and you have incurred bills and you have no health insurance, we're going to make sure that, we're going to make sure that you're not going to get collected from by these collection agencies.
Yeah. So we're, obviously we're not a debt relief agency, right? But we're hopping in to that situation to try to make sure that the client isn't burdened with people calling them or receiving letters or harassing emails or any of this stuff.
Have their credit affected.
Yeah, have their credit affected. Pending. Whereas we get involved, send some letters of guarantees, pay bills if we need to pay bills to make sure that any fires get put out. And the client can then focus on what they need to focus on, which is, hey, getting back to life, whether that's injury recovery, medical treatment, or getting their vehicle fixed, whatever it is, they can focus on the things they need to focus on and not be worried about being hounded about these bills.
Right.
Okay, so that's the uninsured, no medical insurance situation. Let's talk about the person that has health insurance.
Okay. The person that has private health insurance, if your health insurance company made payments towards your emergency room ambulance, then we need to know that. And we'll see that from the bill because a lot of times they'll do something called subrogation, which basically means that they're filing a lien to get paid back for what they paid for this auto accident injury.
Yeah, and people get this letter all the time, and you may have gotten it. if you went to the emergency room for something and you weren't involved in an accident, but you get a letter from your insurance carrier and it says, hey, we're wanting to know, was this injury caused by somebody else? And that's what they're doing. They're inquiring as to whether or not you were involved in some sort of accident so that they can file a claim, which is that subrogation you're talking about. They file a claim to try to get what they had to pay back, either from that person or from that person's insurance company.
Right. They're not checking on you. They're checking on their ability to recover the money that they paid for your treatment.
Okay.
And if it's a private health insurance company, it's their responsibility to find that out. Unlike government health insurance, like Medicare, Medicaid, VA benefits,
TriCare.
TriCare. In those situations, I, as the attorney, have a legal duty to reach out to those entities to say, hey, I represent this person. We think you might have paid for medical treatment. We want to make sure you're taken care of. That's, I guess, to kind of protect the taxpayer in those situations. But when it's private health insurance, I don't have that duty. It's up to the health insurance companies to assert their liens. But when I have clients that receive the communication that you discussed, always recommend that they send that in, because it can complicate their ability to continue receiving coverage in the future if they're not communicating with their health insurance company. So we want to be cooperative, but at the same time, want to protect my clients to the best of my ability.
Okay, so I'm injured. I'm going through a case with our office. I have to keep paying for all these medical treatments that I'm going through. Is my insurance paying it? Is the attorney helping out with that? What's that process?
It's, again, kind of a complicated situation, but no, I do not want my clients to have to come out of pocket for their accident-related medical treatment. And the Louisiana Bar Association's ethical guidelines allow us to fund a client's accident-related treatment. Typically, if someone has health insurance, I want to utilize that to benefit their recovery the most. But in a situation where someone has no health insurance, or where they have Medicaid, which is the payor of last resort, in those situations, I don't want to. The right way to say it is probably not this, but we become the health insurance company for that person's accident-related treatment.
Right.
Which is, there's pros and cons to that. I'm a great health insurance company because I don't make doctors jump through a bunch of hoops when they want to do procedures. But at the same time, I'm also limited by the amount of auto insurance available to the client.
Right.
Yeah. So that can be challenging sometimes.
And I think that gets lost in this sometimes. Sometimes you can have a really traumatic injury that's going to require a lot of treatment. Could be surgery, could be months and months and months worth of rehab, something like that. But there's a limit on the liability policy of the person that hit you. Maybe it's a $50,000 policy. Maybe it's a $100,000 policy. Maybe it's a $300,000 policy. But the injury is so significant, the medical bills can be so high that it's eating into that ultimate dollar amount that the client can get for having to go through this horrible thing that they've had to go through. So when the attorney, it becomes that insurance company, basically, by I'm going to pay for this medical treatment as we go, there is a push-pull between those decisions and the effect that it's going to have on the client's ultimate financial recovery in the case. And that's something that you're informing your clients about, and you're walking through with them the entirety of that case, right?
Absolutely. And, some clients, they say, I need the treatment more than I need the money. I want you to pay for the injection or whatever the procedure may be recommended. So it's a complicated set of questions that the client has to discuss. It depends on their unique situation, but it's something that we don't ask them to go it alone. I'm there every step of the way to make sure they're making the right decision for them and their families. And I'll say this too, you mentioned policy limits. I don't just accept that someone has X amount of limits, because I've seen crazy situations. I've seen attorneys driving around in BMWs with minimum policies, and doctors driving around with, pretty much minimum policies when they knew they, should have had more. So, whereas some lawyers may just say, oh, we got a minimum policy to work with, I don't really just accept that, and usually trying to take the next steps to make sure that, and when it's worth it and when it's justified, that we're not just accepting that. And sometimes there's a potential for excess judgments beyond the limits that's available to us.
Right. So that's, again, said this in a bunch of the videos that we've shot. A lot of times we're coming to you with these frequently asked questions, and instead of being able to just give some black and white answer, it's, well, you know, it depends, and it depends on a lot of these factors. And we're just trying to give you the factors, give people the factors that go into it, so that they can understand, hey, this is a complicated process. This is not cut and dry where there's these very, very specific rules. It takes you, the injured person, working with someone that's going to take the time to make sure that you understand it, and that they, in fact, themselves know all the factors that go into it, and they have the experience necessary to be able to handle those types of claims.
There's a ton of potholes that you can fall into if you're not making the right choices every step of the way.
Right.
You know, it's very easy to, you know, end up in a situation where your medical bills overwhelm your recovery.
Yeah.
And so you really need somebody monitoring that and understanding how much medical bills we have to work with versus how much insurance we have to work with, and keeping the client informed through every step of the process so they can make the right decision.
You just said that, I mean, this is kind of a tangent, but I mean, you think about that. We know how much the cost of medical treatment has gone up over time, but insurance limits, primarily for individuals, have not gone up at the same pace. People are still getting $15,000 policies, $30,000 policies, $50,000 policies that are supposed to cover treatment for, you know, these medical expenses. Well, I mean, you can go through $5,000 or $10,000 worth of medical bills like that in an accident case like that. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, that might get you a little ways. Now, I mean, if you leave the scene in an ambulance and you're taken to an emergency room,
if they're doing CT scans on you in the emergency room and you have a minimum policy, it's pretty much exhausted just right there.
Right. So, I mean, that's a video for another day talking about uninsured motorist coverage.
Yeah.
But it's why these questions come up so much, because I do think it is a concern, a legitimate concern for people when they're facing this of, oh man, I'm going to incur a bunch of medical bills and I don't have excess money to just be doing this, but I need to get the treatment that I need. And that can feel like a very desperate situation for people. So I hope this has shed a little bit of light on that. And if you have questions about this, you can go to our website, johnsonfirmla.com. We have lots of information on there. And if you've gone through an accident, sit down and talk to an attorney. You know, Cooper's my recommendation. The attorneys here at the Johnson firm are my recommendation. But don't go at these things alone. It is great to get wise counsel, people that know what they're talking about, that can give you information and make what you're going through. It may not make it less difficult because what you're facing is hard, but it's going to mean you're not going through it alone, and you're going to have an advocate in your corner that has all of the answers to the test as you're going through it. So hope you've enjoyed this. Appreciate you checking us out. Once again, Jonathan Johnson of the Johnson firm in Lake Charles, Louisiana. This is Cooper Fournet, personal injury attorney here at the Johnson firm. Check out our YouTube page for more information like this, and we'll talk to you later. Hey, we appreciate you watching that video. If you have other questions about other legal topics, check out our website, johnsonfirmla.com, or our YouTube page. We put out material all of the time in the areas of family law, personal injury, and criminal defense. We really appreciate you checking us out. Thanks so much.